Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's cracking, fantasy champs? My name's Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Poppin' Rick.
What's up?
We got a fun episode here for you today. Thursday night preview. One of the better Thursday night football games of the entire year. Super amped to watch this one after the garbage that I had to endure last week. Actually, all three primetime games for Week 10 were awful. So this Week 11 primetime game to start Week 11 is freaking fire. I'm pumped to watch it.
It is a nice little change. Did you pick the Bears last week?
I did, sir.
Okay, good. So you got it.
Yeah. Don't want to be a complete bum, but this will be an interesting one to see how we're going.
Oh.
I'm gonna go with my favorite team, but we'll talk about it at the end. But anyway, so we're gonna do a Thursday night preview, break down all the matchups for this game. There should be a lot more fantasy relevant or fantasy relevancy in this game than last week. Last week there was like two guys, so it was all betting. That you had to do real bad football last week. But anyway, check out our website. Before we jump into that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review. Share us with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, and comment any questions you have about this game. It is Bengals at Ravens. Huge divisional matchup between these two teams. The AFC North is very, very good right now. They're one of the best divisions in football. The Ravens are 7-3, Steelers are 6-3, Browns are 6-3, Bengals are 5-4. So lots of very good players. Good teams in this division. All of them are potential playoff teams.
Yeah.
The Steelers kind of overrated, very much so. They just keep
they're 6-3, dude. I don't know how.
They just keep winning with the turnovers. At some point, that's going to turn around. But they
have basically what Bill Belichick wants. They have a great defense.
Yep.
And a good run game.
Yep.
That's
kind of a good run game.
An okay run game.
But the Steelers play the Browns next Sunday. They play the Bengals the following Sunday. Then they play Arizona. They play the Patriots. And then they play the Colts. And then the Bengals again, the Seahawks, and the Ravens. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential losses there.
I probably would say they lose all 5 of those.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what else it is, too? It's so disgusting. Because Pickett's not that good.
No, Pickett's terrible.
He hasn't thrown an interception since week 4. So he just doesn't turn the ball over. Yeah, they play good defense. Yep. And then that's it.
But the Bengals kind of need this win. And if they get it, the Ravens might even fall back into the bottom of the division with them. So, very, very interesting game. A lot of different angles to talk about, especially with the Ravens losing on a walk-off field goal this week. They lost, right? They were the team that lost?
Yep.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to confirm that, so my brain frying. But anyway, a very important game for them. The over-under is 46 points. I would take the over.
I'm gonna go under.
Okay, all right. I'll go under too. I actually was about to bet the under when I showed this, and then I was like, but should I go over? I don't know.
23-20. That would be 43 points, right?
Yeah.
I'd say it's 23-20.
Okay,
that's my final score.
So this should be a very interesting matchup. But we'll break down the road team first, which is the Cincinnati Bengals, starting off with the quarterback Joseph Burrow. I don't even know if his name's actually Joseph. I think it's just Joe, which makes him even cooler.
It's probably Joseph, right?
But no, I would imagine. But anyway, Joe Burrow, fantastic. He's actually for the last couple of weeks been really, really, really good. What are your, obviously he's probably going to start against Baltimore. Baltimore is a tougher matchup, but he's a start anyway in most leagues. What are your expectations for Joe Burrow in this game?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up. I think the Ravens have a top 10 defense to quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Sleeper has it as a dark red, so that's probably like a top 5 or 6 matchup. Or the reverse of that, a bottom 5 or 6 matchup for quarterbacks. It's not good for quarterbacks. So it's going to be a tough one. It's also in Baltimore, and it's Thursday Night Football. You're going to be kind of in a tough spot because like everything says that Burrow's not going to have a good game, but at the same time, it's Joe Burrow, and he's been since week 5. He has been the old Joe Burrow. He's been really, really good every single week. Other than maybe the Seattle game, but he was still at least startable in that game. So you probably have to start him. You probably have to keep rolling with him, but the expectations aren't high. I would just be hoping for 20.
Yeah.
But he's probably going to be like a low-end QB1.
I'd probably put him in the vicinity of 16 to 18 just because of the difficulty of matchup.
Yeah, I would say that's probably more fair.
But there's always a chance that Joe Burrow could cook in prime time because that's what he likes to do. I hope he does that because I love Joe Burrow, but but he's definitely a start this week. Just kind of temper the expectations if you're playing him. At running back, they got Joe freaking Mixon. Mixon's good. He's been decent on the year. Just trying to find his numbers here of where he is for the season. He is running back 19. So he's had 10, 13, 14, 8, 13, 9 by, and then 20 and 17. So he's probably more or less in the region of like RB 15 or 16 once all the bye weeks go through. So he's been good. Like, not great, but he's been a mid-range RB2. So somebody that you can start in your second running back slot, consistently get 10 points a game and be all right. But he does play this Baltimore Ravens defense, which, like, through weeks 1 through 10 against running backs, they have given up 20 points per game. 16 points per game. So, if they're going to split some opportunity with Travion Williams, then I do anticipate that Joe Mixon doesn't have the greatest game here, but he's still a start.
Yeah, he still has to be a start, I think, no matter what. He was like a 4th-round pick?
Yeah, something like that.
That's a pretty good value because he's produced at the level that he was, I think, drafted at. He's, like you said, RB16, but he hasn't had anything crazy. He has a 120-point game.
Yeah.
But he hasn't had anything bad either. Like, his worst game is 8 points, which won't kill you. Yeah. So he's been good. He's been a rock solid player for your lineup. And I think you have to start him because of that. I agree with you, though. I don't love the matchup, obviously. But just looking on Sleeper, he's had a couple dark red matchups, and he did okay against them. Like the Rams is dark red, he got 14. Browns, he got 10. And against the 49ers, he ended up getting 20 points. So I wouldn't expect 20, but I think he gets double digits this week.
Okay. At the wide receiver position, there's a couple of guys: Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Trenton Irwin. T. Higgins is unlikely to play Thursday, so we can just assume he's out. Chase is obviously a go. And he's kind of a lock to be a good producer regardless of the opponent that he plays. So I feel good about Jamar. But would you start Tyler Boyd this week?
Without Higgins, I think I probably would. I think he's a good flex. Again, temper your expectations. I don't know how well this game could be an ugly one. And I don't know, it's a tough matchup as well. So you take those things into consideration. But with Higgins out, Tyler Boyd is the clear number 2 receiving option. I think this week he had he had 12 targets this week.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to get a lot of targets again this week. Maybe not 12, but you're probably looking to the 7 to 10 range. And because of that, he's going to have some catches, some yards, and he'll probably be worth a start. I don't think he's getting 20 or 19 again, but he'll probably get double-digit points as well.
And then you also have Trenton Irwin, who was a popular pickup last week, for flex play. I would say this is not a week to play him if you're looking for a flex play. He did have 13 points last week against Houston, but going up against Baltimore is a tougher matchup, and it's not something that I don't want to take the risk against tough matchups for players that are already risks to be in your lineup. So you got a good play out of him last week, but I don't anticipate anything on Thursday Night Football against Baltimore. Unless you have anything else to add on Trenton Irwin, we can move on.
No, I would say move on. I agree.
Okay. And then Irv Smith, he's been out there running around.
Has he? Oh yeah, I guess he has.
Doing stuff, I guess. One last 4 weeks, 1 for 11 and 1. So not really doing anything with the Cincinnati Bengals here for fantasy production. So obviously he stays out of your starting lineup this week.
Right.
But wouldn't be surprised if there's a random touchdown here for Irv Smith on Thursday Night Football, because that's what they do to you.
Right. And then I wouldn't say to start this guy, but Tanner Hudson, their second tight end, had 7 targets this week, and last week had 5.
Who the crap is that? He's not even on my list on Player Profiler. Is he a full?
Maybe he's their third tight end. I don't know, but he has 8 and 9 points the last 2 weeks.
Tanner what?
Tanner Hudson. 8 points against the Bills, 9 points against the Texans. But I'm not starting him against the Ravens. No shot.
What the frig?
He came out of nowhere.
He must be a practice squad guy that they called up.
Yeah, he probably is.
Interesting.
I only know this because I saw him on the trending list for tight ends. He was like the second trending tight end.
Wild. I'd stay far away from anybody there. But let's talk about unless you have any more to say on the Bengals, let's talk about the.
No,
I will say. Yeah, last week there were 2 players in the entire 2 games that I would have played comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
Burrow, Mixon, Chase, Tyler Boyd. 4 guys on one team in this matchup. So we got some stuff to watch for the Bengals. Let's talk about Baltimore, who also has a very good quarterback and a guy that'll start this week in Lamar Jackson. I do anticipate that this could be a defensive performance a little bit, because Cincinnati hasn't been great against quarterbacks, giving up 17.9, but they're kind of in the middle of the pack. So they're the 10th easiest matchup for quarterbacks. So it should be an okay opportunity for Lamar Jackson to get some production. But you also have to factor in the Thursday night situation where that, 4 days of rest, all of that stuff kind of factors in just at this point in the season where, you kind of have to, I would say, you take 1 or 2 fantasy points off the projected points of what people think they're going to do, just based on the fact that they got 4 days rest, and Thursday night football games don't usually tend to be high scoring affairs. So, I mean, Lamar could go off in this game, but I don't anticipate him going off, but it is a good matchup. So you can get your hopes up if you want.
Yeah, and I will say Lamar is the type of guy. There's a few type of players in fantasy that they don't really. You can't. They're wild cards. You can't really predict how well they will play on a given week because matchups don't really matter to them. And Lamar Jackson is one of those players. His best game this year was against his hardest matchup, which was in Cleveland. He had 30 fantasy points against all of his Detroit was a green matchup. He put up 36, so that was his real best game. But his second best game was against a dark red. He's played against the Cardinals, that he only had 12 fantasy points in that game, or 11, depending on what your league was. Seattle was a good matchup. He had 11 fantasy points. Played Cleveland again this week, a very tough matchup, had 15. He played the Houston Texans in week 1, which is a mid matchup, and he put up 7 points. He played the Colts, which is another mid matchup, but then he put up 20. It's just all over the place. Every single game, you can't really predict. He can play a tough matchup and get 30 points. He can play against a good matchup and get 10 points. It's very random with Lamar. So you have to start him though.
Hold your breath.
You have to start him no matter what. You
shovel,
took him as probably the QB 4 or 5.
Shovel whatever
he's the QB 5 on the year.
Shovel whatever he puts on your plate into your mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
Could be turds. Could be filet mignon.
He's kind of like the George Kittle of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's true. All right, running back. Couple of weird situations here. I wouldn't start Keaton Mitchell. I wouldn't start Justice Hill. I wouldn't start Patrick Ricard. I wouldn't start any of these guys besides maybe Gus Bus because he has that touchdown upside. If they get in the red zone.
4 straight weeks with a touchdown.
Yeah, 4 straight weeks with a touchdown. Does that make you nervous that he might not score a touchdown this week against Cincinnati?
A little bit. I mean, this week he played Cleveland, which is a top 5 matchup against running backs, and he got a touchdown. So I don't know. Although I will say it's still close. He had 2 yards of carry. So he had a touchdown this week and still scored under 10 fantasy points.
Yeah.
That's so
good.
disgusting.
But he did have weeks prior to that, 21, 29, 17, and then he had 9.
Yeah, he's probably a good flex. I'll say that. Because the Bengals, I don't think they're not like a super tough matchup for running backs either, are they?
No.
So I think Gus is an okay flex. I don't love it, but he could probably get 10 fantasy points and start for you.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Let's move to the wide receiver position. I'm kind of confused as to like Bateman, Aguilar, and some of these guys, like their sits. You also have Odell Beckham. I don't know if he's actually going to play. Let me just check that. I think he's fine. I think he's fine and healthy. But the last 2 weeks, Beckham has had 14 and 11. But he's only had 9 targets in 2 weeks, and he's caught 2 touchdowns in those 2 weeks. So, it's not really, to me, it's not really the production that he's not getting a ton of targets and not putting up a ton of yards. He's just scoring a touchdown and kind of saving his fantasy week. So he's a guy that I would sit this week against Cincinnati, and I wouldn't play on Thursday Night Football. What about Zay Flowers?
Yeah, that's tough. Zay's been kind of inconsistent. He's a good player, and I think he's a good flex still. I would say to start him. I would still say to start him, but he has been kind of up and down, and recently been more down because he just doesn't get touchdowns. He has 1 touchdown on the season, so in order for him to have good weeks, he needs to have like a lot of catches and a lot of yards, and not every single week they're going to do that. But I think against the Bengals in prime time, I know it could be a low-scoring game, but they've been in a lot of positive game scripts this year. They're 7-3.
Yeah.
And they've blown out some teams. And in those games, like the Seahawks game where they blew the Seahawks out by like 30 points, he only had 1 target and 1 catch in that game, and his snap percentage was only 68%. But in more competitive games, he plays like 90% of the snaps.
Yeah.
So I think this will be a competitive game, and because of that, Zay Flowers will get his opportunities. He will, I think, will be an okay start.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the tight end position. It's obviously
you don't want to talk about Rashad Bateman.
No, not at all. Well, Mark Andrews is the tight end here for the Baltimore Ravens, and obviously he's a go. He just came off 6 points this week, so I think this is going to be a week where he probably catches 9 passes and 80 yards and does Mark Andrews things. So I would be. I'm obviously. I think he'll be fine in this matchup, and it'll be pretty good. But what are your thoughts on Mark Andrews for this game?
Yeah, I would agree. I think he'll be fine. I think he's probably a good start. He's always up and down though. Actually, that's not true. He's been very consistent this year. In the past, he's been up and down. I think the Browns though. I remember going into the week because I have Andrews in our home league, and I think he was. The Browns' defense has just been great all year. I think that was a top 5 or bottom 5 matchup, I should say, for tight ends. So it was a very difficult matchup. And the Bengals are the complete opposite. I think they rank like 30th against tight ends.
Yeah.
So Mark Andrews should have a good week this week.
Okay. All right. There you go. Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals should be an interesting matchup. On the season, we'll make our picks right now, but on the season, Rick is 10-0. Freaking A.
I don't know how that happened.
And I'm 7-3, so I can't catch up to him at this point. We still got time, but Rick would have to have a royal collapse. But this should be one of the games. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Rick, what's your pick? Who you got in this game?
You're gonna hate this. I'm taking the Bengals. And my heart says the Bengals, my head says the Ravens. The only reason I'm saying the Bengals, I don't see them losing to the Ravens twice in a season. And I don't see them going 5-5. Like, I feel like it's hard for me to see that. I think they're going to win this game. I think they're going to still make the playoffs. Right now, they're last in the division. I can't see them staying that way. I got to go with the Bengals.
I'm going to take the Cincinnati Bengals as well. I hate that you're doing that to me, but
I know. Next week I'll go someone different.
Yeah, no. I mean, hey, you pick who you think is going to win. I picked the Bengals.
This is a tough one, though. I think we might end up both losing this week. We'll see.
Hey, if that happens, Rick gets a loss. Maybe I should switch mine to Ravens just to hedge my bets. I don't know.
You could.
But I think the Bengals will win. Rick thinks the Bengals will win. I'm going to take the under. Rick will take the under. Be sure to bet on this game. Get your fantasy lineup set. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. Enjoy Week 11. Talk to you later, guys.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.